So we have come to now what is the main difference between an adiabatic process and isothermal process. We will see that in an adiabatic process, it takes place in a system that is neither closed nor isolated. The temperature of the system is never constant because the heat or whatever energy changes is going on cannot be given out of the system, nor something from the surrounding can be taken into the system. The internal energy as a result keeps on changing in the system. There can be work done within the system using the increase in the internal energy due to some changes in the system. A very nice example of this situation is the forming of snow on mountain tops. So you see, here we have got an example of snow forming on mountain tops. Now I'll explain to you a little later how this happens. First, let us see how the isothermal process differs from the adiabatic process. The system is generally closed. It is never an isolated system. Here it is neither closed nor isolated. Next, the temperature of the system is constant because it is isothermal, temperature constant throughout the process. The internal energy remains constant. Heat is given out by the system or taken in from the surrounding to maintain constant temperature. Here heat was not given out. So what happened? The heat was there inside the system. Sometimes it may be increasing, sometimes it may be decreasing. So because of which the internal energy was also changing. Here the internal energy remains constant. Now example of isothermal processes, we know that the process which is going on inside a refrigerator is isothermal. That's how the refrigerator keeps our food cool. Well, now coming back to this adiabatic process. Here we see that in this we are telling there is snow formation on mountain tops. How does it take place? See what happens. The hot air from the land rises upwards. Okay? When it rises upwards, now this air column is assumed to be an adiabatic system. It cannot give out its heat outside. So the air particles inside, that is the gas molecules inside that hot air column, will constantly have increased kinetic energy. Where do they give out this? They cannot give it out as they move upwards. So they start doing work, means they start expanding. When they expand, then who is this they? The gas molecules. They start expanding and push the cooler air on top of the mountains upwards. So they occupy, that is this hot air particles occupy the mountain tops, and as they go up they get cooled. That means inside the air column itself you are having temperature changes. Now when they get cooled, condensation also takes place in case there are water vapor inside that air column, and you will find slowly the water condenses into snow, that is cold icy snow. Now that is how we see how the laws of nature govern different processes which are taking place naturally. And in thermodynamics, we are going to use these laws of nature in our day-to-day life to the use of, for the benefit of mankind. Next, we will see what is meant by phase of a system. When we understand the processes, then now we should know that we have already studied state. Now we are going to go to phase of a system. What is meant by phase of a system? Here we will see. Remember, a state is described by variables like pressure, temperature, volume, number of moles and so on. But a phase will be either solid, liquid or gas. These are the three common phases we know, and accordingly we say the system may be homogeneous or heterogeneous. In short, a region in space where the physical properties like density, hardness and chemical composition remain uniform is called a phase. Homogeneous phase to be precise. Now, an important relationship that comes to connect the state variables, the components of a system and the phase in the system is called the Gibbs phase rule, and we will see soon how this Gibbs phase rule is used in thermodynamics. The Gibbs phase rule says P is equal to C plus 2 minus F, or P plus F is equal to C plus 2, where P is equal to number of phases, F is equal to degrees of freedom, how many independent intensive variables we are having, and how many can be varied without affecting other thermodynamic variables. Such a big sentence. What does it mean? Degrees of freedom means actually the number of intensive variables which don't depend on one another, and how they can be changed, and how many of these independent variables can be changed without affecting the other parameters that describe the state of the system, that is the thermodynamic variables. What is C? C is the number of components. And what is 2? 2 appears to be just a constant. Of course, it has a significance. We'll soon learn about it in the explanation when we see how Gibbs phase rule is of use to us. Now, for example, consider the system of liquid water and ice in equilibrium with each other. So, what will be F? What is F? We said F is the number of independent properties. Intensive properties they must be. And let us see. P is equal to phases, that is solid, liquid. Because we have said liquid water is in equilibrium with solid ice. So, we have got two phases, liquid water and solid ice. P is equal to 2. Components, only one water is there, right? So, water has many phases. We are considering only one, water. So, C is 1. If you solve now over here, P plus F is equal to C plus 2, you get F is equal to 1. So, you have to just specify only one intensive property to describe the system wholly. And that's all for Gibbs phase rule now. We'll discuss it later again.